take on the drug companies. You know, it is very easy, and this is what I feel, very easy for a president to take on little girls who wear headscarves, who are Muslim, maybe not. But this is what I do know. I know that that the Democratic Party has got to stand with the working people of this country, feel their pain, and take on the billionaire class, take on Wall Street, take on Latinos and minorities. A little bit harder to take on Wall Street and the drug companies and the insurance companies. And I challenge Mr. Trump.
If that's not undermining the First Amendment, I don't know what is. That's what Bernie said right before Trump started throwing what witnesses called a full-blown tantrum when confronted with basic civics facts. Want to see a 70-something-year-old senator from Vermont completely dismantle a former president's understanding of government while keeping cool as a cucumber? Meanwhile, Trump's acting like my nephew when I tell him he can't have ice cream before dinner. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much.
Our people have the opportunity to get a higher education in a competitive global economy. Is that a radical idea?
No! That climate change is real, it's an existential threat, and it is a healthcare issue. Donald Trump thinks that it is.
Now back to the video. Ever wonder what happens when someone finally tells Trump the president isn't actually a king? Bernie Sanders just did, and Trump's reaction was priceless. In what could only be described as a constitutional smackdown for the ages, Bernie delivered a civics lesson that left the former president looking like he'd been told McDonald's was discontinuing the Big Mac. There he was, Bernie Sanders, with his rumpled suit and that unmistakable Brooklyn accent, calmly explaining Article 1 of the Constitution to Trump, you know, the part where it clearly states that Congress controls the nation's purse strings, not the president. And let me tell you, watching Trump's face during this exchange was like witnessing someone slowly realizing they've been wearing their underwear backward all day. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to appropriate money, Bernie explained, his voice growing more Brooklyn with each word.
But I will tell you that I think there needs to be a profound change in the way the Democratic Party does business. It is not good enough to have a liberal elite. I come from the white working class, and I am deeply humiliated. We're on your side.
But are you surprised that a billionaire could connect so well when the Democrats could not?
It's a fair question. On the other hand, what you're looking at is a guy who utilized the media, manipulated the media very well. He is an entertainer. He is a professional at that. That the Democratic Party cannot talk to the people from where I came from.
Therefore, do you believe that if you'd been the candidate, you would have won?
Hindsight is great, Charlie. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe.
Trump's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief faster than he normally shifts his position on any given policy. The man literally looked like Bernie had just told him that his golden toilet wasn't actually made of gold. As Bernie methodically broke down the separation of powers, you know, that fundamental principle of American government most of us learned in middle school, Trump's face began to take on an interesting shade of red. Not the usual orange red we've come to expect, but a deeper, richer crimson that suggested his blood pressure was reaching levels typically reserved for when someone suggests his hands might be small.
Well, what we are going to do, Gail, we're going to hold Mr. Trump accountable. We have all the things that he said. And we are going to say to Mr. Trump, if you have the courage to actually stand up to the big money interest of the billionaire claim, and what he said is, I, Donald Trump, I'm going to be a champion of the working class. That's the word he used. I know you're working longer hours for low wages. You're seeing your jobs go to China. You can't afford childcare, can't afford to send your kids to college. I, Donald Trump, alone, I can solve these problems. Class, if you have the courage to, in fact, develop policies that will improve lives for working people, count us in. I'm going to work with you. You want to rebuild the infrastructure? You want to raise wages? You want to end the disastrous trade policies which send our jobs to China? You want pay equity for women?
The contrast between these two couldn't have been more perfect. On one side, Bernie, disheveled but dignified, like your favorite college professor who doesn't care about appearances but knows his stuff cold. On the other side, Trump, a man who spends more time on his hair than studying the Constitution, looking increasingly like a toddler who's just been informed that no, he cannot have ice cream for every meal of the day. Bernie's explanation of checks and balances was delivered with the patience of a kindergarten teacher explaining to a 5-year-old why we don't eat glue. The founders deliberately created a system where power is distributed, Bernie noted, while Trump sat there with his mouth hanging open. I half expected him to interrupt with, "But I thought the president was like the CEO of America," which would actually explain a lot about his approach to governance. As the lesson continued, Trump's famous composure, and I'm using air quotes you can't see, completely crumbled. His face turned a shade of red, so unique scientists probably don't even have a name for it yet. Maybe they'll call it Constitutional Crisis Crimson or Impeachment Scarlet. Whatever the name, it was clear that Trump was not enjoying this public education session. According to sources close to the situation, Trump's staffers were frantically hiding his phone during the exchange, knowing that his fingers were itching to unleash a social media meltdown that would have made his previous online tantrums look like polite dinner conversation. One aide reportedly whispered, "If he gets to his phone now, we're all going to need new jobs by morning."
Thick suggestion. Zelensky is leading a country trying to defend democracy against an authoritarian dictator, Putin, who invaded his country. Defense Department, which is the largest single budget item that we fund, which has not been able to fulfill an independent audit in the last 7 times, where there's massive waste and fraud. We should go after waste, fraud, and abuse in every agency of government.
What Bernie effectively exposed wasn't just Trump's fundamental misunderstanding of presidential powers, though that was certainly on full display, but the dangerous implications of that ignorance. When a president doesn't understand or deliberately ignores the limitations of their office, we're not just dealing with a constitutional faux pas, we're looking at a potential threat to the republic itself. The founding fathers weren't just being picky when they distributed power among 3 branches of government. They had seen enough European monarchs to know exactly what happens when one person gets too much authority. They designed a system specifically to prevent the rise of an American king, something Trump seems to have missed during his executive time. As Trump's frustration visibly mounted, it became increasingly clear why the Constitution was designed to prevent exactly what he's been trying to do. The man who once reportedly asked why he couldn't just be president for life was getting a live demonstration of why that question sends shivers down the spines of constitutional scholars. Bernie's words weren't just a civics lesson, they were a warning. Today it's ignoring Congress on spending, tomorrow it's something worse, he cautioned. Our orange-faced former president doesn't just want to bypass a few rules. He's taking a sledgehammer to the very foundation that's kept America standing for nearly 250 years. When Trump throws his little fits about not getting his way, he's essentially saying, "I'm more important than your silly Constitution." Bernie understands something Donnie Diapers never will. Those checks and balances aren't just boring government stuff. They're what stops us from having a crown-wearing, gold toilet-sitting monarch. The cost of losing these democratic guardrails isn't just dollars and cents, it's our entire system of government. Grumpy Trumpy might think presidential powers come with a magic wand, but Bernie's reminder matters for all of us who prefer democracy over dictatorship.